question for you regarding today's recap. Who here knows the stories of Greek myth involving the goddess Athena? Well, that's a good start. But who here remembers another part of Athena's legend involving a girl whose name is the literal translation for spider? Well, sit back and let Lael-sensei tell you what happened in Athena's legend involving the girl Arachne. But before we start our lesson, I advise you to pause the video so you can take the time to find a notebook and a pencil for you to take notes, because this story is very relevant to today's recap. Are you back? Let's begin. In the story, Arachne was a talented weaver, but she was also prideful that she boasted about her talent being a gift she was born with, rather than a gift blessed by the gods of Olympus, and that nobody else, such as other humans or other deities, could surpass her. This drew the attention of Athena, who, after failing to lecture Arachne, while disguised as an elderly woman, scolded the girl for her arrogance and challenged her to a tapestry contest. Arachne accepted the challenge, and the two wove tapestries depicting the gods. Athena's tapestry depicted the gods in a respectful manner, while Arachne's tapestry depicted the gods taking advantage of their powers while also interfering with the lives of humans. And not only that, but Arachne's tapestry was seen as better in terms of visuals. Thus, Arachne won the tapestry contest. Outraged that she lost to a mortal girl and offended by what that very same mortal girl created, Athena turned Arachne into a spider in retaliation and as punishment for her actions. Other iterations of the story have Athena tearing up Arachne's tapestry in anger, resulting in the latter feeling humiliated and ending with the former taking pity on the mortal girl by turning her into a spider. But what does Arachne have to do with today's recap? And why did I appear as a neat-looking teacher before reverting to my normal default look? Well, that'll be explained very soon. Don't worry, I promise. For now, let's begin today's recap covering the entire story of Inuki Kanako Zekkyou collection, Gakkou ga Kowai, which translates to Kanako Inuki Shell Collection, School is Scary. Inuki Kanako Zekkyou collection, Gakkou ga Kowai, is a 1999 original video animation made by the studio we all know and love, Toei Animation. It was produced by Kadokawa Shoten, Toei Video, and directed by Yuki Kaizawa. The OVA is an adaptation of a manga called Bukita by Kanako Inuki, a famous mangaka known as the Queen of Horror manga. The manga itself being the first entry of the Bukita series, consisting of 3 volumes following the title character. The second entry/sequel is titled True Bukita, with the third entry titled Bukita Swept Away by the Flow of Time, written as a one-shot. The fourth entry, titled Mysterious Bukita, on the other hand, is a comedy spin-off of the series and is a crossover story with Mysterious Tatari, which is another manga made by Kanako Inuki. The word Tatari, just like the other word Noroi, is the translation for curse. The fifth entry, Kanako Inuki's Great Terror, details information regarding the characters Bukita and Tatari. The series itself was inspired by the 1965 horror film called The Collector, which is based on a 1963 novel of the same name by John Fowles, and I'm very sorry if I butchered his surname. Once again, before we start, as a warning, this OVA is an R15 rated OVA, which is the Japanese equivalent of the PG-13 rating in America. That means some of the story's content is considered inappropriate for anyone under the age of 15 and still needs to be accompanied by a parent or adult guardian. And just like before with the recap of Malice Doll's story, some images have been edited to make today's recap family-friendly. Also, in order to bring the story's lore to light, I did some research on the vital information regarding the explanation of the title character's motives, which I promise will soon be explained, and the names of other characters who only made their appearances in the first manga entry but never appeared in the OVA adaptation due to the time and budget. After all, the OVA is based on volumes 1 and 2 of the first manga entry. Not only that, but people on Facebook and Instagram translate scenes that were taken from scanned images of the first manga entry into English and Spanish, since the manga series was never released outside of Japan, and only one chapter involving this character got translated into English as part of a short story collection called Be Very Afraid of Kanako Inuki from 2022, which is what encouraged me to recap what happens in the OVA. Now with that said, let's begin the story of Inuki Kanako Zekkyou collection, Gakkou ga Kowai. We first see our title character entering a school trying to catch a butterfly with a butterfly net, so he can place the poor creature in a tiny cage that can be seen hanging from a strap. All the while, we hear the voices of two girls gossiping about Bukita, basically giving us an expedition on who Bukita is. His full name is Fumio Kida. The name Bukita is a nickname used to describe his appearance and his behavior, which is the reason why the students at the school he attends call him that. He has an ugly appearance with unkempt hair, and he acts like an indecent toad desperate for love, eyeing all the girls with his gross face. But once he has his sights set on the girl of his choosing and says stuff like, "You're in love with me," to her, then that poor girl's life is over. And by that, I meant that she ends up dying in any dark and gruesome way, or ends up suffering a fate worse than death. But for the record, we'll call him by his given name, Fumio. We're introduced to Matsuko, a pretty girl who has that dun in her, but is mostly friendly to her classmates. We see her sitting at a desk in what appears to be an English class, as the teacher reads a section from what appears to be Tom Sawyer. But during the lesson, Matsuko notices Fumio staring at her, which disturbs her. By the time the students go home for the day, after school is over, Matsuko mentions Fumio to her friends as they leave to go home, while Matsuko stays behind to get her belongings from her locker before she goes home. But as she opens her locker, she spots a four-leaf clover falling from her locker, which leads to a whole pile of four-leaf clovers spilling from her locker onto the floor. Guess who? It was Fumio who collected the four-leaf clovers and placed them in Matsuko's locker, like gathering flowers to make into a bouquet to prove his love for her, and immediately tries to make his moves on her by saying that she's in love with him and that she's lying to herself, as a way of denying her own romantic feelings when she tries to reject him due to Fumio being dirty, while stating that gifting her four-leaf clovers is the worst. Yeah, dude, hygiene is extremely important, and you should have just asked her out to dinner first. When Matsuko tries to push him away, he takes the opportunity to gift her with a tiny doll that looks like a dried-up, unpreserved mummy wrapped in a blanket, and asks her to think of it as him. But Matsuko, rightfully freaked out, drops it onto the floor, which upsets Fumio and causes him to run out of the school building, saying that he'll continue to love her even if he dies, and onto the road where he has an encounter with everyone's most hated character, the evil truck. But at the very moment of the encounter, Matsuko notices the tiny doll's head split apart in half and crumple to the ground. Later, during a stormy and rainy night, Matsuko is back in her room, relieved that Fumio is gone, and throws the doll into the garbage bin next to her desk. We then see a figure who turns out to be Fumio walking outside in the pouring rain as he sees his reflection in a broken mirror. Yes, it turns out Fumio has not only survived his encounter with the evil truck, but that Fumio is really an immortal being with dark magical powers. And it's thanks to that immortality that acts as a shield that protects him from being isekai'd by the evil truck, which means being sent by the evil truck to another dimension that's based on medieval times, steampunk, or futuristic mixed with magical or scientific elements.
Did someone say transported to a fantasy world?
Wanting to surprise Matsuko by appearing all clean to impress her, Fumio takes the opportunity to appear out of the water in her bathroom as she's taking a shower like in most horror stories. But this freaks her out and she runs back to her room while wearing a towel. Matsuko, rightfully scared and confused at how Fumio survived and why he didn't remain dead, crawls to a corner where her desk is when she hears Fumio repeat the same words he said before his encounter with the evil truck as he knocks on the door outside of her room. Matsuko, however, still rejects him, saying that there's no way she'd love a dead person, as she knocks over the garbage bin where she threw the doll into. It's then that she realizes that the doll is some kind of voodoo doll that's connected to Fumio. And when he knocks down the door to her room, Matsuko cries out that she prefers someone who's alive as she throws the voodoo doll onto the ground with all her might, resulting in Fumio crumbling into dust and Matsuko laughing in relief. But the next day when we see her at school opening her locker after greeting everyone with a good morning, Fumio appears from the floor and grabs Matsuko by the foot, thanking her for saying that she prefers to love someone who's alive as a magic spell, which brought him back to life. Well, that's a total whoops right there. With fear and tears in her eyes, and rightfully upset about making the mistake of resurrecting the gross toad, Matsuko decides to escape from it all by running out of the school building, slipping out of her right shoe in the process, onto the road, and having her own encounter not with the evil truck, but with a different oncoming vehicle. And since Matsuko is a mortal human, she gets isekai'd to another dimension, which once again means all together now.
Transported to a fantasy world.
Leaving Fumio behind to lament his loss. But remember, kids, always look both ways and watch out for any oncoming vehicles before absolutely making sure it's safe to cross to the other side of the road. We see Fumio sitting underneath a tree and mourning Matsuko's unfortunate and untimely demise, when a lace handkerchief is blown from a window of the school building due to the wind, gently landing on Fumio's hand as he proceeds to use it to blow his nose without even knowing that it belongs to Choco Nonohara, a refined girl from Fumio's neighboring classroom who has a love for anything cute such as woodland critters and has a habit of flattering the boys from the school she attends. Young lady, are you looking to create a reverse harem? 'Cause that's a totally different genre, and the story you're in, unfortunately, does not have that kind of genre. When she asks Fumio if he saw her handkerchief falling onto the ground, he answers that he used it by accident without knowing that it belongs to her as he attempts to return it to her. But Choco, inwardly grossed out, outwardly declines with a smile, saying he can keep the handkerchief if he likes since he used it. Yeah, dude, that's totally gross. But as Choco runs back to her friend, who asks if she found the handkerchief, Fumio perceives Choco's approach and her smile as a romantic attraction to him. Later, Fumio spies on Choco from outside of her classroom as she's talking with her male classmates, as he quietly states that all the girls are capricious butterflies who immediately fly away the second someone takes their eyes off them. Hey, not all girls are like that. That's when he decides to keep Choco for himself by using his supernatural abilities to enchant her butterfly hair clip with a strand of his hair. Ew. And when everyone leaves school for the day to return home as Choco walks in an alleyway, Fumio's supernatural abilities take effect as the butterfly hair clip comes to life and Choco, in a trance state, chases it and tries to catch it as if it's a real butterfly, all the while unaware that it's a trap set up by Fumio as she wakes up in a butterfly-themed bedroom with her enchanted hair clip placed in a tiny cage next to the bed, but the room itself doesn't have any windows to tell the time of day and time of night. Fumio then suddenly appears from behind the confused girl and explains to Choco that she's been asleep for a whole week, advising her to eat a meal he prepared for her. Recognizing who her kidnapper is through the reflection of the soup, A rightfully freaked out Choco tries to escape, but Fumio grabs her by the hair. "Hey dude, that's not cool," and asks why she's scared of him, asking her, "Aren't you in love with me?" when she smiled at him earlier. But just like Matsuko before her and all the other girls, Choco rejects Fumio as she fights back with a fork, with Fumio blocking the attack with his right hand, as Choco runs to the door and opens to find that the room she was placed in is a large box the shape of a huge shipping crate hanging by a rope within Fumio's mansion. Choco then leaps from the larger cage, grabs onto the banister, climbs over the banister, opens the door, and runs upstairs to the exit. But just as she's about to reach the exit, she feels a sharp, sudden sense of pain and collapses at the top of the stair steps. It turns out that Fumio not only enchanted Choco's hair clip to come to life, but also enchanted it as a physical embodiment of Choco. So when Choco passed out on the top of the steps, that was caused by Fumio when he managed to take the fork that she used to attack him out of his right hand and used that same utensil to pin the enchanted butterfly hair clip against the wall. Yo, that's totally not cool. Choco once again wakes up in the butterfly-themed bedroom, having been dragged there by Fumio and unable to move her body, when she notices the butterfly pinned to the wall, feeling pity for it and comparing it to herself. It's then that Choco realizes that the butterfly is her butterfly hair clip that Fumio enchanted, puts two and two together, and uses all her might to free the butterfly to free herself, pulling the fork out using her mouth. She succeeds and regains the ability to move her body at free will. At the same time this happens, Fumio is seen returning to the mansion after getting groceries. Once again, Choco escapes from her prison of a cage-like box, and this time manages to reach the exit at the top of the stairs, while inwardly stating that she's a butterfly that has now gained freedom, just in time for Fumio to discover that Choco escaped after entering the butterfly-themed room with a new meal he prepared for her, lamenting his loss as Choco is seen leaping from a balcony. But she made one mistake. She should have taken her butterfly hair clip with her and escaped the mansion in a much more strategic way, since the hair clip is connected to her. And because it's connected to her, the enchanted butterfly hair clip falls to the floor and shatters in Fumio's hands, meaning that Choco, like Matsuko before her, meets an untimely demise after landing on the entrance gate to Fumio's mansion, in a similar fashion to this woman from The Undertaker and His Pals, who meets her own end on a fence. Ha ha, how very funny. Fumio is seen again roaming the school halls when he comes across the art club and finds painted self-portraits of its club president, Lisa Monma, a skilled painter with a tendency to affect an air of aloofness, but possesses the soul of a theatrical artistic spirit at heart, while projecting a calm and composed demeanor. And yes, just as Appa-chan wrote on her picket sign, Lisa Monma is a reference to the famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Deciding to make her his muse, he attempts to impress her with his own painting. Sensing his presence, Lisa is then asked by Fumio if she can't love others by only painting self-portraits, whether her paintings will move the hearts of others if she has no love for them. Hey dude, that's not a nice question to ask. Even artists have the capacity to love others. Like me. Offended, Lisa walks up to him, only to be in awe and amazement at Fumio's painting, to which she answers that she can love others, but only if they're in her paintings, and if they're the subject of her paintings. It's only then that Lisa realizes who she's talking to, when Fumio takes her hand and asks to be the subject of her next painting, to which she accepts with reluctance.
Challenge accepted!
Lisa paints Fumio's portrait while Fumio continues working on his painting of Lisa, but the former, rightfully creeped out by the latter, decides to take her painting outside to add the finishing touches. But once again, Fumio uses his supernatural powers to trap Lisa within an illusionary world that mirrors reality, as he takes the opportunity to use the paintbrush to mess with Lisa as if he's playing a mini-game within a T-rated art-themed video game? Wait, what? Huh? Appa-chan, have you been messing with my script? Not wanting to be used as an object of desire, and rightfully angry, she uses the palette knife to stab and leave a tear in her painting, causing Fumio to feel pain, which results in the illusion disappearing and Lisa regaining the upper part of her sailor school uniform. Yeah, you go, girl! Feeling victorious, she decides to head back to the art club room to continue finishing her self-portrait. But when she enters the room, she finds Fumio vertically sliced in half. Since Fumio is an immortal being with supernatural abilities, his left half grabs Lisa by the foot, but she breaks free from his grasp and crawls to a shelf of blank canvases as his two halves stand up and try to seize her. Nearly driven into a crazed frenzy after realizing both the mistake she made and that she's still trapped in the illusionary mirror world, Lisa decides to escape from Fumio and live alone in eternity. But not by running out of the school building and back to hide in her own house since she's trapped in Fumio's illusion. Instead, she takes a paintbrush, a blank canvas, and paints an image that depicts herself inside a coffin buried underneath the ground with Fumio standing in the short grass. Essentially, Lisa seals herself in her own painting, which can only be described as a fate worse than death. Once again, Fumio is left all alone to lament his loss, as the last we see of Lisa is when she's shedding tears while sealed inside her own eternal prison. Not sure if this part has anything to do with Fumio, but the short story called Kaiki Tamate Bako, which translates to Box of Wonders and Horrors, is a short story made by Kanako Inuki, so it counts as part of Kanako's own steady star system. There's not much to it. It basically shows us a little girl who's trying to get to sleep, but is kept awake by her fear of the dark and her fear of monsters who lurk in the dark, waiting to make their move, with one creepy-looking monster and impressive animation coming out from the girl's closet and preying on her as she tries to close her closet door shut to stop the monster using her toes. She succeeds and opens her eyes to see it's just her socks sticking out of the closet and lying on the floor, breathing a sigh of relief that it was just her imagination. Or was it?
Dun dun dun!
We see Fumio again, who has successfully caught and placed the butterfly that was seen in the prologue in the tiny cage, only to see it fade in its color and wither away. Fumio is left in distraught with dejection, asking why nobody loves him and why nobody will accept his love. Dude, time to wake up. It's because of how you act, how you behave, and how you treat girls. You need a psychiatrist, dude. And proper hygiene. I mean, take a good look in the mirror. You're so ugly, bro. He then sees multiple butterflies fluttering within the school building and reasons that there wasn't enough of his love and love for him as he runs around trying to catch any butterfly. We see 3 girls hanging out on the stair steps within the school building, with 2 girls admiring the drawings of Yumeko Hiruno, a shy girl and pure-hearted romantic who wears glasses due to poor vision, but is talented at drawing manga, stating that the boys in her drawings are much kinder than the boys of reality. Not gonna lie, that is true, but not all boys of reality are that bad, but I will agree with the need of artistic escapism. Suddenly, Yumeko's childhood friend, a boy by the name of Yanase, appears out of nowhere as he immediately takes her glasses and proceeds to tease the poor girl for being in love with boys in manga. However, he bumps into Fumio, who happens to be walking up the stairs, which causes Yumeko's glasses to fall and break. Hey, young man, that wasn't very nice. Yanase then runs off blaming Fumio for what happened, with Yumeko upset at Yanase's actions, as she states that she hates boys who are rough, mean, and insensitive like Yanase, which is why she prefers the boys from the drawings of her making. Again, I do agree with the reason behind her hobby, but not all boys are that bad. Sympathizing with Yumeko, Fumio helps by picking up the manga pages she worked on and asking her if she's okay as he hands back her manga. Even though she's unable to recognize him without her glasses, Yumiko thanks Fumio for his kindness as they introduce each other. Fumio, pleased to see that a girl is treating him with genuine kindness, believes that he found his beloved partner and decides to make her his soulmate. When the students head back home from school, Yumiko is seen trying to walk down a flight of stairs, but is unable to do so due to her poor eyesight as she takes a bad step and trips. Fortunately, someone catches and saves Yumiko in the nick of time and helps her walk down the stairs. Once again, due to her poor eyesight, Yumiko is unable to recognize who her savior is without her glasses, as the mysterious figure runs off by the time they reach the bottom of the stairs, leading her to believe that Fumio saved her. The next day at school, Yumiko shows her manga featuring her own self-insert in a fairy tale setting, along with a drawn representation of Fumio resembling a handsome prince from a shoujo manga or an otome visual novel, explaining how she imagined what Fumio looked like since, due to her poor vision, she couldn't get a clear view of his appearance after her glasses broke. Still an understandable reason behind her hobby, but look at the details in her drawings. They're so amazing. Keep up the good work, kid. Fumio states that Yumiko would be disappointed to see his appearance if she got her glasses fixed and wear them, to which Yumiko states is incorrect, since he's a kind person who treats her with kindness, and asks if he says that it's best for her not to wear glasses. Fumio consoles her and replies by stating that nearsighted people have pretty eyes. During their conversation, Yanase is seen spying on them, but when Fumio senses his presence, Yanase fortunately runs off without getting caught. By the time the students are heading back home for the day, Yumiko's friends advise her to get her glasses repaired as they warn her about Fumio due to the rumors of him being responsible for the deaths of Matsuko and Choko spreading around the school. Yeah, young lady, what your friends are saying is true. Plus, you're better off with Shido Itsuka, the protagonist of the Data Live series, and he's quite the charming Chad for his kindness and his moral code. Seriously, there's a reason why I like to call him modern-day Galahad. But Yumiko becomes upset at them for talking badly about Fumio and runs out of the classroom, running past Yanase, who tries and fails to stop her. By the time everybody is gone, it's sunset as Yumiko is seen sitting in the hallway looking at her illustration of Fumio, still upset at how horrible everyone's view of him is. At that moment, she hears Fumio calling out to her. Recognizing the voice of her Prince Charming despite not having her glasses on, Yumiko runs towards Fumio and says that she no longer wants to remain in the real world. Embracing her, Fumio takes the opportunity to use his supernatural skills to become the man based on the illustration she drew, and grants her wish to immediately escape from reality as he whisks her away to the dream world. Yanase, having opted to stay behind to find Yumiko, finds only her manga and her school bag. Through sheer luck, based on the info he gathered after hearing the rumors surrounding Fumio, Yanase succeeds in finding the mansion he lives in during a rainy and stormy night. He enters the mansion and finds the door that leads to the basement, where he finds a hypnotized Yumiko working on her manga. Meanwhile, within the manga dream world, Yumiko and Fumio are together, with the former dressed up just like her manga self-insert, while the latter is seen having taken the appearance of Yumiko's illustration of him. Just as they're about to kiss, Yanase steps in to snap Yumiko out of her trance by putting her glasses on her after he got them repaired. Good for you, Yanase, taking responsibility for your actions. But that causes Fumio to freak out and goes into yandere mode as he uses his supernatural powers to prevent Yanase from interfering as the two boys fight, with Yanase gaining the upper hand. They argue about their love for Yumiko, as Yanase confesses that he loves her and has been in love with her the whole time. But Fumio, unaware that Yanase is Yumiko's childhood friend, argues back that Yanase teased Yumiko all the time, to which Yanase admits that he did tease her, but only out of love for her. Fumio states back that the kind of love that Yanase or anyone has would never fill a human heart, as the former shows how desperate he is for Yumiko's love to fill the void in his own heart by showing the latter a gaping hole in his chest. He doesn't mean it in a metaphorical way. He literally has a gaping hole in his chest where his heart should be in a cartoonish style, which freaks out Yanase and causes him to pass out. And it's at this point where I get to explain Fumio's origins and motives. We've reached the point where I can explain the reason why Fumio has a gaping hole in his chest and what it has to do with Arachne. But first, it's time for a pop quiz. I hope you took notes during our lecture on Arachne's story. Question 1. Who was Arachne and what did she boast about? A. An acrobatic who claimed to be the star of a traveling circus. B. A class representative who kept stating to be better than her classmates. C. A philosopher who kept saying Plato was wrong about his allegory. Or D. A weaver who claimed that her talent was a gift she was born with. Zekkyou! Question 2. What contest did Arachne and Athena have? A. A painting contest. B. A tapestry contest. C. A multiplication contest. Or D. A science contest. また正解! Question 3. Who was the winner of the contest? A. Aphrodite. B. Plato. C. Arachne. Or D. Psyche. またまた正解! よし、今は最後の質問だ。みんな、お頑張り! Question 4. What did Athena turn Arachne into as punishment? A. A spider. B. A butterfly. C. A cat. Or D. A dog. If you got all answers correct, then you received 100 points with an A+ on our quiz. Congratulations! よく勉強したんだね。先生は君たちのことを誇りだよ。おめでとう! Now to explain Fumio's origins. He was once a normal boy who lived in a time during an age of myths and folklore, that being the era of ancient Greece. He was loved by everybody, but he possessed a heart that made him incapable of loving anyone in return. One day he met Arachne who, in this incarnation, was the middle child of 3 sisters, and just like her mythological counterpart from one of Athena's legends, she was also a weaver. But in this incarnation during Fumio's origins, Arachne was a simple-minded weaver who was focused on her work. Unfortunately, like most individuals in the real world who are talented in whatever field they study in, their work begins to suffer declination due to various reasons. In Arachne's case, her work as a weaver began to decline when she fell in love with Fumio. This had consequences as the villagers, who admired Arachne for her weaving work, didn't want her to stop as they were very dependent on her work for various reasons. Thus, the villagers, hoping to compel her to resume her weaving, go to Fumio to provoke and manipulate the poor girl. But over time, Fumio, who was developing a conscience, grew weary of deceiving the girl who genuinely loved him. Tragically, she found out about the deception and, feeling betrayed, decided to depart from the mortal realm by plunging a weaving needle into her chest. In her final moments, she stole Fumio's heart and cursed him to forever walk the ends of the earth as an immortal being, unloved by anyone for all eternity, which explains why he has that gaping hole in his chest. And for good measure, she also cursed him to look ugly. It's at that point where the goddess of wisdom showed up, and just like one of the iterations of Arachne's story from one of the legends of Athena, took pity on the poor girl and turned her into a spider, with no tapestry contest occurring. Fumio, meanwhile, has wandered the earth as an immortal being in search of an eternal lover who will restore his heart by loving him in the hopes of breaking the curse. He's not subtle about it, having become increasingly delusional from believing that any girl he comes across is in love with him as the millennials rolled by. So before there was Yoshitoki Oimasu to your eternity, with the insane Hayase and her reincarnations trying to get Fushi-senpai to notice her and father her babies, there was Kanako Inuki's Bukita, with the title character Fumio, an immortal being like Fushi, but with the mentality of Hayase mixed with that of an iconic skunk we all know and love, trying to find an eternal lover who could break the curse placed on him. With that said, now we can head back to our program. We see Yumeko back in the dream world, left alone wondering where Fumio went off to. Right on cue, Fumio appears from behind her as he tightens his grip on her, asking if she loves him even now, and begs her to say that she loves him and only him. To his surprise and relief, Yumeko answers that she does love him no matter what he looks like, as the gaping void in his chest is restored. Aw, how sweet! Unfortunately, Fumio's relief is short-lived when Yumeko mentions the moment she nearly fell down the stairs and was saved by him. Or at least she thought it was him when he saved her, only to realize that it wasn't Fumio, but Yanase who saved her, as Fumio, being the supernatural, immortal being that he is, sees her memories of that moment and is left in shock, realizing that Yumeko's heart always belonged to Yanase, as the poor immortal being's heart becomes a gaping void again. Ooh, that's gotta hurt. Heartbroken, Fumio urges Yumeko to leave and return to Yanase, before the former changes his mind, effectively releasing Yumeko from the dream world and back into reality, as Fumio and the dream world are erased due to Yanase using the eraser in the real world. But Yumeko stops Yanase and reassures him that everything is alright and whatever happened is over. When Yanase asks where Fumio is, Yumeko heartbrokenly answers that Fumio never existed since the beginning, just a short-lived romantic fantasy as her drawings, including her illustration of Fumio, fade away as both Yumeko and Yanase embrace each other. Well, what do you know? Yumeko was the only girl who treated Fumio with genuine kindness and returned his affections, and in the end was spared death and returned to reality to live her life with Yanase. It's kind of a sad ending to a short-lived love story when you think about it, huh? We see Fumio again, lying on the floor and still having a literal empty void in his chest, wondering where the eternal love of his life who can restore his heart is, as a swarm of butterflies surround him and cover his body in light as he dissolves into a swarm of butterflies and disappear, leaving only his butterfly net and tiny cage behind, as we hear him stating that he's sure he'll eventually find his eternal lover. And after the credits roll with a nice song called Yours by East Cloud, we get a post-credits scene of a classroom of an entirely new and different school, with a female teacher introducing a transfer student to the students of the classroom. The story ends as we hear a familiar voice, revealing the transfer student to be none other than Fumio himself, still determined to find an eternal lover who will break his curse as he introduces himself to the students of the classroom at his new school. I just want to give a huge thanks to my fellow patrons. This one took about 3 months to complete. I apologize for taking so long due to being busy helping my folks and deciding to take my Patreon channel in a different direction. But that doesn't mean it will stop me from making animatics and illustrations, just as a side hobby for the time being, but still mainly focusing on recap stories since they're very fascinating and fun. But for now, I'll be taking a break since I'm helping my folks out. But I do have some good news. My recap of Malice Doll has over 400 views as of now. If you like recap story videos, check out Oni Black Mage and his recap videos where he recaps video game stories, link in the description. If you're interested in watching my recap of Malice Doll, please click the link to check it out. For those of you who enjoyed this recap video, please share it on any other site or social media with other fans. It's the best way to support the channel. If you're interested and want an unusual story you love to be recapped, please leave a comment in the comments section or consider becoming a patron on Patreon. If you love art in general, please feel free to visit me on DeviantArt and Instagram. Also, wouldn't it be fascinating and interesting to see a new death battle episode featuring Shido and Fumio fighting each other? I do. Anyway, thank you for watching.